Welcome, and thank you for joining me for this video. Today we are going to be covering a topic that I think is very important. Groupthink is something I learned about when I was in college. I think it's important to know that groupthink is the rule and not the exception. People who go against the grain and the majority are very rare. A lot of the people in a group will attack the person who thinks differently than them. Groupthink is defined as the practice of thinking or making group decisions in a way that discourages creativity or individual responsibility. What I really want to focus on is the science behind groupthink because it is very conclusive. I've drawn my own conclusions on the subject and its origin in my book, The Purpose of Life, a brief scientific and magical guide for the age of Aquarius, but it's a subject I think everyone should know about without the esoteric angle. The reason is, the moment you know that this is a thing in life, you can choose to be different. As someone who believes that individuality is one of the paramount purposes for experiencing life on Earth, stepping into the responsibility and integrity of being an individual is important. Once you realize that groupthink is at work, you can choose to participate or choose to be different. First, there is the Stanford prison experiment from 1971. All the people who participated volunteered. Some were randomly assigned as guards, and some were assigned as prisoners. The end result is that even though these people knew that they were supposed to be pretending, they changed. The guards became so aggressive they even beat their fellow students. The prisoners, on the other hand, became submissive and didn't defend their fellow prisoners. The experiment became so out of control that it was shut down from the outside. Some of the kids that were prisoners said that their lives were ruined after the experiment because it was so traumatic for them. These kids knew they were in an experiment, so why did they behave this way? Turns out it had a lot to do with peer pressure and groupthink. When the guards put on their uniforms and glasses, they became authority figures. When the prisoners put on their prison uniforms, they became prisoners. Uniforms alone can completely dehumanize a person. Removing names and calling people numbers also dehumanizes them. The next experiment that I want to bring your attention to is the Milgram obedience experiment that was conducted in the 1960s. The subject of this experiment was told that they were to shock the other participant. They thought that it was a study on memory. They were told to read a series of numbers to the other person, and when the other person got the number wrong, they were to shock them using a button. Each time the person missed a question, they were instructed by a member of the study to increase the amount of the shock. Thankfully, the people that were supposed to receive the shock were actors. The button that the participants had didn't actually do anything, but the actors were convincing enough to convey the idea that they were being hurt. At one point, even though the actor in the other room was screaming as though in pain, the people that were participating in the experiment were expected to continue shocking them. Some people said no, but the majority of participants continued to shock the other person simply because they were told to do so. This was a test to see how people reacted to authority. The scientists conducting the experiment wanted to see how far the participants would go when instructed to cause another person pain by someone in authority. 72% of participants continued to push the button when instructed despite the reaction of the actor. Finally, there is the Asch conformity experiment. This was performed because Asch was fascinated with how Hitler and the Nazis happened. Everyone in the group in the Asch conformity experiment was an actor but the participant. They were shown lines and were asked which one was the longest out of a series. Each person in the group would then respond with their answer. What they discovered is that when 3 people in a group were in agreement, the subject would deny his own senses and agree with a group. We are programmed in such a way that we will go along with a group and deny our own personal truth just to conform. In addition to this is the bystander's effect. Encyclopedia Britannica describes it as the inhibiting influence of the presence of others on a person's willingness to help someone in need. In 1964, a woman named Kitty Genovese was murdered as 38 people watched for an hour and a half. Only one person contacted police after Kitty died. Research has confirmed that the amount of bystanders is important. At a certain point, the amount becomes less important. As long as there's bystanders' presence, people are not likely to react. There are many theories as to why people do not act to help someone in need when there are others present. Some believe bystanders go through a 5-step decision-making process before acting. Others suggest it's because the bystanders look to others for cues on how to behave and the diffusion of responsibility. Groupthink has such a powerful effect that it can literally cost people their lives. The good news is now you know that it exists. Without confirmation that a phenomenon is real, we can't make decisions regarding it. Personally, I choose to be the difference in the world. I face my own moments of the bystander effect. When I worked at a grocery store, I saw a man behaving oddly, and my coworker commented to keep an eye on him. I watched as he fell and yelled at her to call 911. This complete stranger, who was very big and intimidating looking, was convulsing horribly. I told him he was going to be alright as I helped the managers keep him turned on his side to keep him from asphyxiating. Most of the shoppers walked by. One couple commented they were his neighbors. My co-worker did not become involved. She watched from a distance. Thankfully, this story has a happy ending. The man survived. Had I not known about groupthink or the bystander effect and never thought about it before, I might have been intimidated and stayed around just like everybody else and watched the scene instead of becoming involved. The man came back about a month later. He was a sheriff that worked at a local jail on one of the toughest floors. He never shopped in our store. He'd felt funny and for some reason came in. Our quick thinking in the store, since he did bite his tongue, saved his life. If he'd stayed in his car, his doctor told him, he would have died. I could have been a bystander and watched the man convulse to his death. I didn't know to turn him on his side, and it was the unfortunate experience of one of the managers who'd watched someone die during a convulsion that gave us that knowledge. But if I hadn't reacted and called for help, he would have died in a busy grocery store surrounded by people. The thing is, I knew about groupthink and the bystander effect. I knew it was up to me to react and to step up. I knew that it was only a rare individual who would do so. I didn't know him, and I had no idea at the time that what I was doing was going to be life or death for him. That's why I wanted to share this information with you. That way you can choose to act and be the exception instead of the rule and in the same sort of situation. Thank you for joining me in exploring this fascinating subject. I hope you look into the different experiments that I listed. There are some really interesting videos out there with stock footage from the experiments. Anyways, thank you and bye for now.